Tonight, let me tell you a little bit about what's happening. How many have seen President Trump's State of the Union message? Listen, CNN said only 48% of people liked it. They lied to us. 70% of America liked that speech. And by the way, very presidential, was pretty amazing to me. And we're going to talk about him tonight a little bit and give you a really good understanding. There's a great article that I want to read to you tonight and show you a little understanding of how we should be and how we should think about him. So let me give you a couple things that are going on in the New World Order. Let me tell you a little bit about this. This is called the Doomsday Clock. It was started in 1953, and what it was started for is right after the atomic revolution that we had in the 40s, and the bomb that was in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Scientists got together and they decided how close mankind is to annihilating himself, to an Armageddon. So they keep this clock. That is midnight that's there, and they keep this clock showing us how close we are to midnight, or the 0 hour, where mankind's going to exterminate himself. So Doomsday Clock reaches 2 minutes to midnight, closest point to nuclear annihilation since the Cold War. The Doomsday Clock was moved on Thursday to 2 minutes to midnight, marking the symbolic point of global Armageddon that the clock represents has reached since 1953. So this is the closest they think we are to annihilating ourselves. Citing President Trump's proactive rhetoric toward fellow global powers, North Korea's continued nuclear weapon and ballistic missile tests, and heightened tensions between the United States and Russia. Members of the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists said that the world is the closest it's ever been to nuclear annihilation. Now, whether or not that's true, how many of you know it's even closer to Christ coming back? Amen. Let me give you a little bit more what's going on in the world news. We've been talking about AI, artificial intelligence. This came out this week. It's easy to confuse the current geopolitical situation with that of the 1980s. The United States and Russia each accuse the other of interfering in domestic affairs. Obviously, it's in the news a lot. Russia has annexed territory over the U.S. objections, raising concerns about military conflict. As during the Cold War and after World War II, nations are developing and building weapons based on advanced technologies. During the Cold War, the weapons of choice were nuclear missiles. Today, it's software, whether it's used for attacking computer systems or targets in the real world. I'm not going to read you all of it. I'll just go ahead and paraphrase a little bit. It goes on to tell you this, that there's a new dynamic coming out. There's a paradigm shift. They're saying that the next people who are going to, or the next group, or the next government that's going to control the world, is going to be someone who is controlling AI, that's developing it, the artificial intelligence, weapons, and technologies. And we know that someone is actually pushing that, and his name is Putin. And I'll read just a little bit about this. Just like the Cold War in the 1940s and 1950s, each side has reason to fear its opponents gaining a technological upper hand. In a recent meeting at the Strategic Missile Academy near Moscow, Russian President Vladimir Putin suggested that AI, artificial intelligence, may be the way Russia can rebalance the power shift and created by the U.S., outspending Russia nearly 10-to-1 on defense each year. So here's what he's saying. We've always been in a race to have a better defense mechanism than Russia has, and Russia's done the same with us. So Putin's saying, instead of us putting money into our armaments, we're going to start putting money into AI, because the people who control, or the government controls AI, is going to control the world. It is the next step. It goes on to say this, a world of cyber conflict. Cyber weapons, however, particularly powered by AI, are still considered fair game by both sides. Russia and Russian supporting hackers have spied and electronically launched counterattacks against power plants, banks, hospitals, and transportation systems, and against the United States elections. Russian cyber attacks have targeted the Ukraine and U.S. allies Britain and Germany. The U.S. is certainly capable of responding and may have done so. Putin said he views artificial intelligence as the future not only of Russia, but for all humankind. In September 2017, he told students that the nation that becomes the leader in this sphere will become the ruler of the world. Now, here's the thing that really kind of hits me about this. Anytime you see something in the government or in defenses starting to accelerate, they're the ones that set the pace. We know that the militaries get the most funding a lot from a lot of countries, and so any new technology, they're the ones that takes it to the next level and it becomes a consumer technology. Let me give you an example. How many have ever heard of RFID? RFID is radio frequency identification device. You may not know this, but the government, American government, really perfected it. Anytime anything was shipped overseas from the military, they had an RFID tag on it. What that does is you can put a scanner by it, probably within 5 to 10 feet, sometimes within 50 feet. It'll scan the product, take it out of an inventory, and basically you can control that product. A lot of people, when it came out, thought that it was something that the mark of the beast was going to happen. Well, it's being used today because how many of you eat cereal for breakfast? Well, maybe you want to do this. In your cereal box, most cereal boxes, if you pull the cardboard apart, you're going to find an RFID tag in there. It's a very small one. And so when you get out of the store, all they know, what they know is, even though they're ringing you up, as it goes through that scanner, that RFID tag takes it out of their inventory. Let me tell you this, they also have done this in marketing. They have taken scanners and gone down neighborhoods, and they can tell if you have Schick razor blades in your cabinet. And so they will target you and market you. So my point is this, the government is the one that does this. The government was the one that purported it, and they did it for this reason, so they could control their inventory. It's a very interesting reason. And now it's become something that's being used quite a bit. Now that's not scary to me because they're only going to be able to market from it. What my point is AI, artificial intelligence, gets the governments on board. When they get governmental money, you're going to see that technology take off like crazy. So basically, we're watching a paradigm shift coming when it comes to military. And the end of this article says this: the importance of AI development. A country that thinks its adversaries have or will get AI weapons will want to get them also. Wide use of AI-powered cyber attacks may still be some time away, but not very far. Countries might agree to a proposed digital Geneva Convention to limit AI conflict, but that won't stop AI attacks by independent nationalist groups, militias, criminal organizations, terrorists, and others. And countries can back out of treaties. It's almost certain then that someone will turn AI into a weapon, and that everyone else will do the same, even if it's only out of a desire to be prepared to defend themselves. With Russia embracing AI, other nations that don't, or those who restrict AI development, risk becoming unable to compete economically or militarily. With countries wielding developed AIs, advanced AIs can create advantage for a nation's businesses, not just its military, and those without AI may be severely disadvantaged. So when I tell you about artificial intelligence and it's coming, it is coming. And it's going to come very, very fast once the militaries get involved in it. Let me give you this one that's come out. Germany's new censorship law, which has introduced state censorship on social media platforms, came into effect on October 1st, 2017. It's being enforced based on January 1st, 2018. The new law requires social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, YouTube to censor their users on behalf of the German state. So the article goes on to say this: social media companies are obligated to delete or block any online criminal offenses such as libel, slander, defamation, or incitement within 24 hours of receipt of a user's complaint, regardless of whether the content is accurate or not. Social media companies are permitted 7 days for the more complicated cases. If they fail to do so, the German government can fine them up to 50 million euros for failing to comply with the law. Now here's what's happening. If you understand history, you understand that Germany is a hot spot. It's always been a hot spot. World War I was started because of Germany. World War II was started because of Germany. Germany is extremely anti-Semitic. It has always been anti-Semitic. They have programs against the Jews, and they've had them since the turn of the 19th century. And so when we see Germany start to limit free speech, and that's what they're doing right now. Let me remind you that Germany is supposedly a type of loose democracy. But they're starting to limit free speech, which means if somebody goes against their government or their president, and on social media, they can fine that company or that individual 50 million, did it say? 50 million euros. That's like $75 million. And so can you imagine what would happen in America if we find CNN every time they talk against the president? So it's basically what's happening. We're watching this thing come about, and Germany is scary because Germany has the strongest economy of any European country. It is forming its own type of block system, and if anything happens, you're going to see Germany at the head of it in Europe. And so when we talk about the revived Roman Empire, we're talking about something that's probably going to have some type of basis with Germany. So it's kind of scary to me for the world to see that Germany's rising again by putting down people who have free speech. It's not a good sign. Let me give you this one also that's coming down the line. This is from Israel. And as we see, by the way, this was the AI picture that went with that article that came out this week. And this is Israel. This is interesting. I told you this last week, but I'll give you a little bit more on it. Two vice presidential visits to Israel. What a difference. Anyone who watched Vice President Mike Pence address the Knesset had to be deeply impressed by his heartfelt solidarity with Israel. Unlike the previous president, who seemed to think the Jews took an interest in Eretz Yisrael only because of the Holocaust, Pence did not shy away from affirming the Jewish people's ancient ties to the land of Israel. Quote, "It was the faith of the Jewish people that gathered the scattered fragments of a people and made them whole again. That took the language of the Bible and the landscape of the Psalms and made them live again," Pence said. Again, and it was the faith that rebuilt the ruins of Jerusalem and made them strong again. The miracle of Israel is an inspiration to the world, and the United States of America is proud to stand with Israel and her people as allies and cherished friends. Watching Pence's address, this article writer said this, "I cannot help but recall the very different action of the last vice president who visited Israel. Joe Biden visited Israel in March 2010, almost exactly at the moment Biden was speaking at a press conference with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Somebody, quote unquote, leaked to the press that the Israeli government supposedly had just announced plans to build 1,600 Jewish homes in occupied East Jerusalem." By the way, that was the Obama administration that leaked that. They wanted it to come out. In fact, it was not some new plan, but an unexceptional housing construction project that had been slowly winding its way through the Israeli bureaucracy for years. The government did not make some grand announcement at the moment of Biden's visit. The old plan just happened to advance slightly through the normal bureaucratic procedures. The plan was not for 1,600 homes, which sounds as if Israel was going to build 1,600 separate houses. It was for 1,600 apartments in apartment buildings, meaning that it would take up less than 1/10 of the land the houses would require. In any event, nobody would be displaced by the new apartments. They were in Ramat Shlomo. It's an existing Jewish neighborhood in Israel's capital of Jerusalem. But of course, the Obama-Biden administration, unlike the current U.S. government, did not recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. So even apartments in the uncontroversial Ramat Shlomo neighborhood were suddenly branded illegal Israeli settlements. Time magazine declared that Israel had publicly humiliated Joe Biden. An article in The Atlantic was headlined, "Israel Humiliates Joe Biden." And so it went, a careful choreographed crisis that sure sounded a lot like the infamous echo chamber, which presidential aide Ben Rhodes later boasted about, created to promote an Iran deal. We may never know who leaked the Jerusalem news to the press, but we have our suspicions. The only actual humiliation that took place was when Biden forced Israel to publicly apologize to him, even though it had done nothing wrong. The ugly episode would, of course, be followed by many other instances in which the President, Vice President, and Secretary of State, we won't mention who she is, or other Obama administration officials chastised Israel or leaked anti-Israeli accusations to the press. But in his address, Biden outrageously accused Israel of being the obstacle to peace because of what he called the steady and systematic expansion of settlements. By the way, do you have any wonder why we had so many calamities in 2017 or 2016? So many of them. Listen. Now contrast that vice president with his loquacious successor. "We stand with Israel because your cause is our cause. Your values are our values. Your fight is our fight," Mike Pence said in the Knesset. "We stand with Israel because we believe in right over wrong, in good over evil, and in liberty over tyranny. We stand with Israel because that's what Americans have always done. And so it has been since my country's earliest days." You've got to know that America is going to be blessed this year. We are blessing Israel like nobody has ever done it before. We are coming out boldly in front of the world stage and telling the world that we're on the side of Israel. No president, Democrat or Republican, has ever done that before. And so you're watching it happen. Yeah, you can give the Lord a hand. So let me tell you how the Knesset reacted to this. Pence's speech, another article, rife with biblical references, rocks the Knesset. U.S. Vice President Mike Pence was met with one standing ovation after another in the Knesset, some of them lasting 15 minutes long, by the way. During his speech, rife with biblical references and expressions of support for Israel and the Jewish people. Under U.S. President Donald Trump, Pence said U.S.-Israeli ties are stronger than ever. "We stand with Israel because we believe in right over wrong, in good over evil, and liberty over tyranny. The people of the U.S. have always had a special affection and admiration for the people of the book. In the story of the Jews, we've always seen the story of America. It's the story of Exodus." I'm quoting from him. "A journey from persecution to freedom. A story that shows the power of faith and the promise of hope," stated Pence. The first U.S. president to address the Knesset plenary spoke to a packed room. A devout evangelical Christian, Pence paraphrased the Psalms over and over again. "The U.S. is proud to stand with Israel and her people as allies and cherished friends. And so we will pray for the peace of Jerusalem," right from the Psalms. "And those that love you be secure, that there be peace within your walls and security within your citadels," right from Psalms. "And we will work and strive strive for that brighter future, so everyone who calls this ancient land home shall sit under their vine and fig tree, right from the Psalms, and none shall make them afraid, right from the Psalms. Man, I'm telling you, I get excited when I think about what we're doing on behalf of Israel. Let me give you a little bit more from Israel. So Netanyahu is warning Putin this week that he better be careful in what he's doing in Iran. I'm not going to read you the whole article, but here's what it says. He tells them that he knows that Hezbollah is building up their arms on the Lebanese border. They're building up their arms in Iran, and basically what they're doing is they're setting camps up and they're bringing lots of military hardware in, lots of bombs in, and he knows. He went to Moscow and he told Putin, here's the deal. I know that they're fighting ISIS right now, but you have a puppet government right now in Iran, and Bashar al-Assad's not going to last forever, and as soon as that war is over, the Hezbollah is going to turn their weapons on us. And he told Putin this. He says, I am not going to let them do that. I will take them out every time I see it. And amazingly, Putin never said a thing. He knows that Israel will do that, and he knows that Israel has the right to do that. And so Israel made it clear that we're going to start taking these places out, and Israel will do that. They'll send their jet fighters in there, and they'll take every one of those camps out. And you know, the world's going to continue to go against Israel, but Israel's going to stand up for itself. And let me give you another one. He said, Benjamin Netanyahu at Davos. Jerusalem to remain the capital under any peace agreement. Netanyahu was interviewed by CNN's Fareed Zakaria on the main Davos stage on last Thursday, saying, under any peace agreement, the capital of Israel will continue to be in Jerusalem. Netanyahu reiterated that the seat of Israeli government is in Israel, and that Jerusalem has been the capital of the Jewish people for 3,000 years. Donald Trump did a great service for peace, he said, because peace can only be based on truth. You can't build peace on fantasy, the Prime Minister said. When asked whether there was anything to be said for Abbas's historical connection to Jerusalem, which, by the way, they have none, Netanyahu stated that Israel's position is that Jerusalem should remain and will remain united under Israeli sovereignty with complete freedom for everyone to practice their faiths as they choose. He further claimed that if you were to change that, you would see Israel descend into the sectoral violence that categories other places in the Middle East. Israel is the safest place in the Middle East, by the way. The Palestinians should have all the power to govern themselves, I love this quote, but none of the power to threaten us. In any political arrangement, the Jews must retain security control in the area of Jerusalem, because otherwise you'll have an ISIS. We have a mosaic of failed states in the Middle East, and we don't want another one. I'm telling you, this guy knows what he's talking about. And based with the United States giving him a push forward, he is going to be, there's not going to be any trying to fool with him, and I think it's really great. Haley slams Abbas over hate-filled speech, following a warning from President Donald Trump that the U.S. will cut aid to the Palestinians if they refuse to. Again, the first time ever any president ever even said that. I like what he said in his State of the Union address. He said, why are we giving money to our enemies? I mean, why are we? That's a pretty good statement. If they refuse to return to the peace talks with Israel, he says they're getting nothing if they don't want to come back to the table. His ambassadors to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, specified the administration's criticism to PA President Muhammad Abbas, questioning his ability to lead his people to peace. I ask here today, she said, where is the Palestinian King Hussein? He brokered a peace deal. A fired-up Haley told a monthly gathering at the UN Security Council on Thursday. Where is the Palestinian Anwar Sadat? He got killed for doing a peace deal. If President Abbas demonstrates he can be that type of leader, we will welcome it. His recent actions demonstrate the total opposite, though. Haley focused her criticism of Abbas's around a speech he delivered earlier this month that has gotten little attention in the media, she said. He rejected any American role in peace talks. He insulted the American president. He called for suspending recognition of Israel, Haley said, slamming Abbas for spreading outrageous and discredited conspiracy theories, which included the assertion that Jews have no claim to the land. She said that he was absolutely a liar. And let me tell you something, those are strong words to come from a UN ambassador. And let me just tell you what's happening with Russia also. This is Pence at the Knesset, and let me just tell you what's happening with Russia. Putin's up to something. He's trying to push us into some type of conflict. I think he's trying to do it so he can get world opinion on his side. I read a book that President Kennedy read when he was facing the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's called The Guns of August. It's a great book. It's a book about how militaries will build up and get right to that spot and do something wrong to pull somebody else into a world war, and it happens all the time. The Guns of August gives a warning that you need to step back and not provoke each other. Well, Russia is provoking America, and let me tell you how it's done. This is something that has never happened before, and it's pretty amazing when you hear about it, especially when you think about a jet flying at Mach 3 or Mach 4. Russian jet comes within 5 feet of a U.S. Navy plane over the Black Sea. Now, 5 feet is a millisecond away from a disaster. A Russian fighter on Monday, Monday flew within 5 feet of a U.S. Navy reconnaissance plane over the Black Sea, marking another close encounter that American military officials contend increased the risk of mid-air collisions. A Russian Su-27 crossed directly into the flight path of a Navy EP-3 and forced the United States aircraft to fly through a wake of turbulence behind the Russian fighter, according to U.S. naval forces. The duration of the intercept lasted 2 hours and 40 minutes. It was tempting it 2 hours and 40 minutes. Let me tell you what happens there. It goes up the chain of command, and they actually ask if they could fire on them. American would ask if they could fire on them. It's a provoked act. And so the president would definitely be alerted to that, especially after 2 hours, and he could say, take them out of the sky. And when we talk about, the media is talking about Trump and how he's a hothead and he's ready to push us into war, he obviously did not do that. He's obviously smart enough to know that he's not going to be provoked into a war. So the thing is this, the spokesman for the NAVOR, which monitors it, says unsafe actions increase the risk of miscalculation and mid-air collisions. When you're flying at 4 times and 3 times the speed of sound is 750 miles an hour. When you're flying at Mach 3 and Mach 4, a split second can make all the difference in the world. 5 seconds is unbelievable. So it can make all the difference in the world for a crash. Such encounters have been an ongoing concern for the U.S. military, she said, which has faced a series of provocative intercepts by Russian aircraft during the past few years. So Russia is definitely trying to get America to a spot where it'll do something that will bring the world against it. Let me give you a little bit more and go to religion. This is kind of interesting, and I think this is a really good one to tell you. You know, I'm going to tell you right down the line about President Trump doing things that are favorable, and he's done an awful lot of things that are favorable. By no means does that mean that I back everything he does. How many understand that? We really need to be clear about this, and we really need to understand this article is probably the best one that I've ever read. It says, with all respect to our president and with my appreciation for the good things he's done, he did not die for my sins, and I have not staked my soul's salvation on his reputation. That distinction belongs to Jesus the Messiah alone. Why the need to state something that is so self-evident? It's because evangelicals are being judged on the character and accomplishments of our president rather than on the character and the accomplishments of our Lord. Hence the need to remind a watching world that there is only one Savior and his name is not Trump. Unfortunately, in large part due to the media's anti-Trump frenzy, if you dared to vote for Trump, let alone speak a positive word of support on his behalf, you're considered complicit in his every failing. But be it an adulterous affair that's rumored to be happening, or in his past, or an inappropriate tweet in the present. Whenever Trump is guilty of, or perceived to be guilty, you're guilty. And if you dare to endorse him, you have committed the unpardonable sin. One of my ministry school grads was having a conversation with a stranger while they waited in line at an event. The conversation turned spiritual, and my former student began to share his faith. The stranger asked him, "Did you vote for Trump?" When he said yes, the man refused to talk to him anymore. Jesus wasn't the issue, Trump was. A Christian woman told me that a close family member is no longer open to hear about Jesus because she had voted for Trump. The conduct and character of this Christian woman no longer matters. The message of redemption through the cross doesn't matter. All that matters is that this family member perceives Trump to be a dangerous buffoon, and anyone who voted for him cannot be taken seriously. May I suggest that, at least in part, this is a demonic attempt to turn people away from the Lord. May I suggest that our message has never been tethered to a politician. May I suggest that we fight against this aggressively, not by defending Trump, but rather by asking more basic questions like this. If you were starving and I offered you free, healthy food, would you ask if I voted for Trump before you accepted it? If you were drowning and I reached out my hand to save you, would you choose to drown if you knew that I had voted for Trump? The point is that the gospel message states that people are perishing without Christ, but through him we can offer salvation. This is good news regardless of who we voted for. It saves the lost whether we who bring the message are Republicans or Democrats. We must proclaim this without fear and shame. I agree that some evangelicals have so visibly hitched themselves to Trump and or other Republican Party that we have compromised our integrity, as if political power was of greater importance to us than serving a lost and hurting world. We alone are to blame for this, and we alone can fix it. He goes on to say this. At the same time, the very liberals who thrash us daily for our political affiliation as followers of Jesus have no problem with Christian support of Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton, despite their support of the slaughter of the unborn and despite their largely ignoring the Christian genocide in the Middle East. Why no shrill cries of hypocrisy? Why no protest marches in the streets? Why no one saying, if you voted for Obama or Hillary, I won't listen to your gospel message? For me, the solution is simple. When asked how I voted, I'm happy to say I voted for Donald Trump, but I did so with hope mixed with reservation. That's why on some days I'm tremendously proud of him, while on other days I cringe. But given the choice of Hillary or Trump, I'm glad I voted for Trump. Pretty good stuff. This one came out under religion also. 250 million Christians have been persecuted, mostly by Muslims. 250 million Christians experienced high levels of persecution around the world, including being killed, abducted, raped, sexually harassed, and 793 churches burned to the ground last month. It goes on to say this, that it lists the countries that have done it and the entities that have done it, and it's 85% Muslims that have done it. Muslims all over the world are persecuting Christians. There's a tremendous onslaught against Christians. It's a genocide in some countries. And then it goes on to say this, but last week we had told you this, and it goes on to say this, that North Korea is the largest persecutor of Christians. Well, here's the difference. North Korea is the largest persecutor of Christians right now. But if Kim Jong-un is taken out of the way, we know that persecution will stop in North Korea. If you take and displace one of the leaders of a Muslim world, the persecution will continue to go on. And it goes on to say this, and it's a pretty amazing thing. It says, there are some important distinctions that we need to be made. While Christians are indeed experiencing a life of hell in North Korea, overthrowing Kim Jong-un's regime could not only lead to a quick halt of this persecution, but also to a rise of Christianity, as happened recently in Russia. Under the Soviet Union, between 12 and 25 million Christians were killed for their faith, and approximately 153,000 churches were shut down. Since the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, about 1,000 churches have been rebuilt every year. And according to a 2014 Pew report, between 1991 and 2008, Russians identifying themselves as Orthodox Christians rose from 31% to 72%. That South Korea is so distinctively Christian reflects what could be done, what could be in store, and creating fear for its northern counterpart. It's said that the church in North Korea, the underground church, is vibrant. It is unbelievable. They are watching people get saved every single day, hundreds and thousands of them. If time is on the side of Christians living under the communist regimes, it is not on the side of Christians living under Islam. The center of the greatest Christian Byzantine empire is now increasingly intolerant, Islamicized Turkey. Carthage, once a bastion of Christianity, where one of the Christendom's greatest theologians, St. Augustine, was born, and where the New Testament canon was confirmed in 397 AD, is today 99.8% Muslim majority, Tunisia. Centuries of persecution are forcing non-Muslims to live as barely tolerated third-class residents are responsible for the demographic shift that Tunisia and other former non-Muslim nations are experiencing. Long after North Korea's Kim Jong-un has passed, though, and is gone, tens of millions of Christians and other infidels will still suffer persecution. As what began in the 7th century, Islam, comes closer to fruition and the entire world becomes more Islamic and infidel-free, as in Iraq. Confronting these uncomfortable facts is at least a welcome first step in countering the problem. I've told you this over and over again. Islam is not a religion, it's a civilization takeover. They're not going to be happy until they kill every Christian or drive them out to the ends of the earth, and every Jew. So it's something that is extremely demonic, and this goes out over the news and it goes out over the wires. Islam is not a religion, it's a demonic movement to control mankind. And I know that may sound strange. I have some friends that are Muslims, and basically I tell them the same thing. They're great people, but the religion is tainted. Let me say amen. All right, I'll get a lot of emails from that one, and that's okay. Here's one for it. Pope Francis apologized to abuse victims, but reaffirmed support for Bishop Barros. I'm going to read this one. I'm going to tell you something else. Now, this goes out all over the world, all over the United States. Well, I come from Pennsylvania. There's a man that's a Christian in Pennsylvania that knows me. I went to high school with him. And every time I say something about the Catholics or the Pope, he writes me these scathing things. I never answer him back because I don't want to hurt him. But he's hearing it now, I'm sure, because he listens to it. So the Pope came out and he said this. The Pope Francis apologized to victims of clerical sex abuse, saying he unknowingly wounded them by the way he defended a Chilean bishop accused of covering up abuse by his mentor. Now here's my problem with this. The Pope is supposed to be the vicar of Christ. He's supposed to be, when he speaks, he's supposed to be the voice of Christ. He is infallible according to Catholic doctrine, and I hope my friend's listening. Infallible means he cannot make a mistake. So when you apologize for something, it means you made a mistake. Now watch. So, it says, speaking with journalists on his flight to Rome from Lima, Peru, the Pope said he only realized later that his words erroneously implied that victims' accusations are credible only with concrete proof. To hear that the Pope says to their face, Bring me a letter with proof is a slap in the face, the Pope said. Pope Francis was referring to a response he gave in Iquique, Chile, when local reporters asked about his support for Bishop Juan Barros of Arsono. Given the accusations that the bishop may have been aware of abuse perpetrated by his former mentor, Father Fernando Caradima, the priest was sentenced to a life of prayer and penance by the Vatican after he was found guilty of sexually abusing boys. The day they bring me proof against Bishop Barros, I will speak. There is not one piece of evidence against him. It's calumny. Is that clear? The Pope had told the reporters in that city. So obviously he made a mistake. He made a mistake. I don't know what they're going to do with him now. I don't know what they're going to do with Kaplan doctrine. But obviously that's not a good thing. All right, let me give you the couple last ones. This is one that came out. Sacrificing children to transgender ideology. I think it's important because I think there's a lot of information hitting us and we're not getting all of it. Just listen to this so you can understand how skewed some types of research is. Don't be fooled by the scientific sounding jargon. Transgender ideology is just that, an ideology. And it's endangering lives. What do you do as a Christian when someone cites a scientific study allegedly proving that transgender kids do well with hormone therapy and sex reassignment surgery? Well, you've got to ask some questions. That's certainly the right strategy for a new $5.7 million study just commissioned by the National Institutes of Health. Now, let me caution you here today. Let me let you know that anybody who's suffering from this or anybody who's going through this is an individual that Christ died for. And so you can't just blanket statements, and you can't do any hate statements either. But there are scientific things that are out there that we need to interview and look into. Writing at Public Discourse, Jane Robbins and Erwin Tuttle predict that the study, once completed, they're doing a study for $5.7 million to study this, will become the evidence for supporters of so-called affirmation therapy. Now, I have a problem with that because if they haven't done the study yet, how can they say that it's going to be evidence? They're concluding it already. So just listen to the article as it goes on. In other words, it will be used to support chemically and surgically altering the development of healthy bodies of children to make them look like those of the opposite sex. The study's methodology, authors, and stated purpose all make it clear that it's crafted to produce a predetermined conclusion, that transgender affirmation therapy is safe and effective for gender dysphoric youngsters. The study's authors all but admit this, writing in their abstract that their goal is to use cross-sex hormones in order to induce development of desired secondary sexual characteristics that bring the body into closer alignment with the youth's internal sense of gender. Notice the appropriateness of altering a child's body to harmonize with his or her preferred gender is just assumed. It's not evaluated. And this assumption is destructive, even sometimes deadly. Let's be clear about what affirmation therapy really means. Children are given high doses of puberty-suppressing drugs. Doctors then flood their systems with testosterone or estrogen to induce the formation of opposite-sex characteristics like breasts in males and facial hair in females. The so-called treatment will render them infertile for life and can create a host of side effects like cancer, infections, gallbladder diseases, and spikes in blood pressure. There's also no long-term research on how these high doses of hormones affect bodies in the long run, bodies that weren't designed to handle them in the first place. There is, however, abundant data on the psychological damage of medically transitioning. One study from Great Britain found that 35% of patients who'd undergone this procedure regretted it. Wait Heiter, a man who formerly lived as a transgender woman and now identifies with his biological sex once again, thinks that's a serious underestimation. He cites research showing that 52% of post-operative patients attempt suicide. 90% have a significant form of psychopathology, and half develop depressing symptoms. The NIH, that research that is going on, is apparently ignoring all this. And it's clear even at this early stage that they've got a conclusion in search of an argument. All four of the doctors and clinics selected to conduct the research are deeply invested in transgender ideology. 2 already conduct irreversible hormonal transitions, sometimes on children as young as 14 years old. Listen, your prefrontal cortex is not developed. Your CEO is not developed in your mind until you're at least 25. And so they're doing things that's really wrong. And one calls therapies aimed at reconciling kids with their biological sex dangerous. Yet the NIH is paying for research with our tax dollars to engrave these feelings irreversibly on children's bodies, all at a time when they're too young to fully understand the consequences. My problem with this is not the people that are suffering or going through this identity crisis. My problem with it are the adults that are pushing something on someone that they don't really understand. Come on, somebody say amen. All right, let me give you one last thing tonight. Actually, 2 things. Let me give you this one. Planet. How many of you looked up into the sky last night? How many saw it? What did you see? Actually, it's a three lunar events colliding together in one night. The first lunar eclipse of this year it was a rare celestial phenomenon which occurred yesterday. A blue moon, which is a second full moon in the calendar month, by the way. A supermoon, when the moon is unusually close to Earth, making it bigger and brighter. And a blood moon, a moment during an eclipse when the moon appears red, will all coincide. It all happened last night. This will take place, and did take place for the first time since 1866. Not since, let's see, how can I put it this way? Andrew Jackson was president. Not since Billy the Kid roamed the Wild West. As the three lunar phenomena are coinciding, NASA has targeted the rare spectacle as the super blue blood moon, which will be visible in large parts of the United States, northeastern Europe, Russia, Asia, and the Indian Ocean, and the Pacific, and Australia. Let me give you one other thing about this. Every single month of this year, every single month, there's going to be a rare type of celestial event. I'm going to wait until March so I can show you the next three. I'll probably tell you the things as they're coming along, and then we're going to look back historically and see what's happened. By the way, the day this came out, there was a large earthquake in Ecuador. The exact time the moon appeared, there was a large earthquake in Ecuador. So we'll look at those things and we'll try to match them up. Be careful when you hear people talking about things like this and saying this is what it means, because we only know what it means in retrospect. How many know what I'm talking about? All right, one last one. That's a pretty lot of heavy in the news, is it not? All right, so let me give you something lighthearted. Has nothing to do with prophecy. You ready for it? He's ready for it. Anybody else ready for it? Good. Here you go. Monks run out of the world's best beer. I just had to read this to you. Monks at a Belgian abbey have been forced to stop selling their famous beer after it was voted the best beer in the world and promptly sold out. The Abbey of St. Sixtus of West Vertlian in western Belgium is home to some 30 Cistercian and Trappist monks who lead a life of seclusion, prayer, manual labor, and beer brewing. A survey of thousands of beer enthusiasts from 65 countries on the Rate Beer website in June rated the Westvarian 12 beer as the world's best beer. But the Abbey only has a limited brewing capacity and was not able to cope with the beer's sudden popularity. Our shop is closed because all of our beer has been sold out, said a message on the Abbey's answering machine, which it calls the beer phone. And the Abbey has no intention of boosting its capacity to satisfy market demand. We are not brewers, we are monks. We brew beer to be able to afford being monks, the Father Abbot said on the Abbey's website. Monk Mark Bode told the De Morgan Daily, outsiders don't understand why we are not raising production. But for us, life in the Abbey comes first, not the brewery. Well, that's nice to hear. That's in the news for tonight. I'm going to ask the others if they come forward. Let me give you a couple